Most people assume disrespect starts with someone else's bad attitude. It doesn't. Long before someone interrupts you, ignores your opinion, or speaks down to you, they have already been studying you. Disrespect actually begins the moment people discover that your standards can be negotiated. Human beings are constantly reading silent signals. We test environments to see what behaviors are tolerated, forgiven, or excused. People rarely launch a direct challenge right away. They start with a small, sarcastic remark or a broken promise, testing your baseline to see exactly where your limits lie. This creates a major trap for the highly agreeable person. You might think you are earning respect by keeping the peace, laughing at jokes at your expense, apologizing when no apology is required, or changing opinions to avoid friction. But psychologically, you are signaling that your boundaries are flexible and your need for approval is high. The uncomfortable reality is that human nature rarely protects what comes without conditions. When you tolerate minor boundary crossings without consequence, the appreciation people initially had for your kindness decays. It turns into familiarity turns into entitlement, and entitlement inevitably becomes disrespect. The author Robert Greene emphasizes a single principle throughout his work. Power is entirely rooted in perception. Before anyone challenges your authority, they measure your self-worth. If they sense your confidence relies on their validation, they know they hold the cards. To reverse this dynamic, you have to stop playing the emotional game of seeking approval and start playing the strategic game of psychological leverage. The goal is to move from a position where your identity is up for negotiation to a position where you control the outcome regardless of outside validation. The core mechanic of this new game relies on a shift in access. You command true respect when your presence is established as a highly valuable resource, and losing access to you carries a very real, undeniable cost. Our natural instinct, the moment we feel criticized, is to jump in and defend ourselves. We feel an overwhelming urge to over-explain our intentions, list excuses, and try to prove we were misunderstood before they have even finished speaking. But every unnecessary explanation gives the other person access to your inner world. You hand them a psychological blueprint of your triggers. When you speak endlessly in conflict, predictable patterns emerge. They learn exactly which buttons to press to easily manipulate your behavior. Contrast that with someone who simply listens calmly, responds only if necessary, and completely refuses to justify their decisions. Their silence creates a massive vacuum of information. There is no emotional reaction to exploit, and no desperation to be understood. That lack of information forces the person criticizing you into deep uncertainty. They begin wondering whether their words had any effect at all, or if they miscalculated their approach. Because they cannot emotionally read you, they cannot predict your next move. By intentionally controlling the flow of information, you replace impulsive reactions with deliberate responses. You introduce an unpredictability that makes you incredibly risky to challenge, naturally shifting the balance of power back in your favor. Many people operate under the illusion that boundaries are created by loud arguments, verbal threats, or dramatic demands for respect. In reality, a person constantly announcing their limits is usually broadcasting their own insecurity. A true boundary is quiet. It is a calm, highly predictable reduction in a person's access to you. If someone crosses a line, you don't raise your voice or seek revenge. You simply withdraw your attention. There is a vital distinction here. Punishment is driven by emotion, acting out in anger to hurt the other person. Boundaries are driven strictly by principle. You are not punishing them. You are mechanically protecting your own self-worth. When you quietly remove your presence, you establish a tangible consequence for crossing your line. The person learns to associate disrespect directly with loss, and human beings remember consequences far longer than they remember conversations. People learn through consistent actions, not verbal promises. When you enforce a strict, unwavering cost of access, your boundaries become impossible to ignore. The cost of testing them is simply too high. There is a heavy price to the always-on mentality. If you answer every message immediately, constantly rearrange your priorities for others, and remain accessible no matter how you are treated, people slowly begin to take you for granted. Familiarity without value breeds indifference. We apply economic scarcity to social dynamics, plotting availability against perceived value. When your presence must be earned, your value naturally rises. But as availability drops, notice the competence metric shooting up. Scarcity backed by continuous personal growth creates assets that cannot be replaced. This high value generates the ultimate psychological advantage, the fearless willingness to walk away. When others realize you are perfectly content to leave a toxic environment because you have options, the dynamic immediately inverts. When your confidence comes from your actual abilities rather than social applause, your value becomes independent. At that point, disrespecting you becomes a massive risk because they know they cannot afford the loss of someone who genuinely enriches their lives. Silence, calm boundaries, and scarcity are highly effective tactics, but they mean nothing if they remain isolated ideas. To truly command respect, these actions must compound into unwavering daily habits. A lot of people waste their energy trying to protect an image, but an image is fragile. It depends on what people happen to think of you today. Character is permanent. Character is built by making hundreds of small, consistent decisions that dictate exactly what people expect you to do tomorrow. When you refuse to compromise your standards under pressure, time after time, your reputation hardens. It begins to travel ahead of you, establishing a silent warning in the minds of everyone you meet that manipulation and disrespect will hit a brick wall. Eventually, you reach a state where you rarely need to defend yourself at all. Other people observe your historical pattern of walking away from bad deals and maintaining your composure under fire, and that memory does the heavy lifting for you before conflict even starts. We often confuse power with the forceful domination of others, but true strength is the exact opposite. It is the disciplined, quiet mastery of oneself. When your identity is not for sale and your principles are non-negotiable, you stop chasing recognition. Respect ceases to be something you have to loudly demand and becomes the only logical choice people have left to give.